it's parental. Well, my parents always did this, so that's where I learned about money. And they were always paycheck to paycheck. And so now it becomes a generational thing. The worst kind of income from a tax perspective is W-2 income. Unfortunately, it's what 90% of the world deals with.
True. Yeah.
Right? So, which is why they say defer, defer, defer. But the second worst one is retirement income. That's all taxable as well. The best one is tax-free. A saver is more worried about that fifth year and losing money than making money in the other four. A grower is more interested in making money.
All right, well, welcome to our next episode of Financial Fitness. I have the privilege of being your host today. I'm Tyler Shoemaker, and I've been with you before, but today is a very, very special day. I'm going to introduce the founder of Financial Fitness, and he has a new surprise to share with us, and that surprise is a new book called Mind Over Money. So with that, I'd like to take a minute. This individual, again, is the founder of Financial Fitness. He's a seasoned financial advisor and professional, decades of experience being a teacher, and now an author. Let me welcome back to Financial Fitness, Philip Board.
Thank you, Tyler. Wow, who's that guy? Talk about pumping me up. I'm like, oh, yeah. So thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, that's right. We've been together a couple times already, and I think our viewing audience is in for a real treat today.
Yeah.
Because this is the first time that we're really getting to cover something that you've created, something that you've composed. And so I'm excited again to get into it. We have a couple copies with us today.
Yeah, I hold it up next to my face.
That's right. So
my picture's on the back.
That's exactly right.
I covered it.
Yeah. But if before we jump into the details, right, and we'll cover this a couple different times, but if someone had an interest in purchasing this book, where would they go and where would they grab it?
Well, first place they would go is you can go on Amazon and you search for Mind Over Money and then add my name behind it, Philip Board, and that's Philip with one L. It'll show up there. You can order it currently as a paperback or as a Kindle, or even a hard copy like this. Also, it's available on Apple Books and Barnes & Noble. However, I did take my daughter into the store over here in Montclair, and it was not there. I was shocked to find out that I didn't actually hold shelf space there.
I was expecting an end cap,
right? Totally. When were they going to invite me in for my signing?
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
So.
Yeah. No, that's very good. Yeah, and thank you again for my signed copy. I know there's been a few others distributed in our circle, and then we're really excited to bring these to our general audience right now. So very exciting times. I've watched this labor of love from a as I work with you, each and every business day, and watching you go through this process has been really interesting, fun. I could see, the days that it was a triumph for you, other days where it was challenging. And so we're excited again today. We're going to dive into that and talk about that process. So with all of that said, tell me about the genesis and how this all originated for you, just globally, to write a book and the topics that it covers generally.
The book is actually, in a way, a second edition. I was approached by somebody and they asked me, would you like to, author a chapter? And I didn't really know what to talk about. And at the time I came up with 4 money mindsets. And it really was just a few pages in a larger book. After it was published, one of the other authors, and there were 12 of us in there, one of the other authors came to the guy that organized it and said, the only one worth reading was the one Philip wrote.
Wow.
And this is a guy who's been in the business longer than I have, lots of experience. And I really took that as a huge compliment, and also took a step back and thought, maybe I could expand on that subject and turn it into something a little bit bigger. And that was the genesis of the book. So that first chapter was published last year, and I set a goal for 2025 to publish my own book. And we did it.
Yeah, you hit that goal.
I did.
Right? How exciting. Well, that's really neat to hear about the origination and the genesis of the book. I would be remiss if I didn't address this early on in our time together, right? But went right at the beginning with the dedication page, right? You dedicate it to your lovely wife, Patricia, and your daughters,
Yep.
kind of the inspiration and the support that they gave you. But could you talk a little bit to them? And, the idea of having you work on this, it's been a labor of love. So there's been time that you haven't been with them maybe as much. So if you could develop that a little bit for us, I think it's fascinating to hear, and I'm excited for them to hopefully see this clip.
I'd love to tell you that they were really, come on, Dad, get the book author. It came out, and they were like, that's nice, Dad.
Yeah, the girls.
It landed completely
Yeah.
flat with them. And I'm like, no, but look, here's the book.
Yeah.
And they're like, that's nice, Dad.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is because I've been talking about it for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I'm not the first author in my family. My mom worked on a book, and it was published about 2 years ago.
That's neat.
Yeah. Hers is an entirely different subject. She grew up in World War II, and it's about she didn't meet her dad till she was 5 years old.
Yeah.
Because he was away fighting in World War II. So not the first author. So they're not. I don't think they look at it as something like, wow, this isn't something that everyone does.
Yeah.
Because we have 2 authors in our very, very small family here in the United States. So they were like, cool, Dad, what's for dinner?
That's great.
So,
Yeah.
But I do it for them.
That's
you know?
awesome. So,
and we have conversations about the way you have to think about money at the dinner table. So a lot of this is from years of experience in the industry. And again, when I started with Patricia, we started with nothing.
Yeah.
So many of these steps I have lived through myself. So this isn't just observational. This is been there, done that.
So how neat. So you have multiple authors in the family. So that's neat because it has to inspire your daughters. And then again, your beautiful wife, Patricia, just supporting you through it. If you could talk just a little bit to that, because again, I'm married as well, right? And I know when I come home with different ideas, you get that sometimes it's always encouragement, but they also know what it entails. So if you could just talk a little bit to Patricia's contributions and support as well.
Yeah, we certainly talked about this. We're out walking the dogs on some days, and we're talking about the different aspects of it. And we remembered where we were as we were going through the particular sections of the book, and it helped certainly mold what the outcome is. And it was. There's lots of conversations at home about this, and I hit writer's block at one point, which is a real thing, by the way.
Okay.
I thought that was only if you're writing fictional, but I'm sure we'll get into it, and if you don't, just tag it for later.
No, I will. Yeah, I think that'll be a interesting thing to hear about, and it is neat. And I watched it. Again, working with you on a regular basis, almost every day. I did notice different times, and just like a lot of life, ebbs and flows, right?
Yeah.
So it was really neat. Let's shift into the big themes in the book, and you've already alluded to them or mentioned them already. But if you could discuss a little bit about the mindsets, really from spender all the way to builder, if you just want to take a few moments on each of the mindsets, I think that the audience will find that really valuable.
Thank you, Tyler. So essentially, when I wrote the original chapter, there was only 4. But in talking to people, successful people, I realized that there was a 5th that's a little bit rarer. So we'll start at the beginning. And the first part of the book, it talks about being a survivor. And survival is something that, unless you're fortunate enough to have a parent support you while you're starting your career or your business, it's basically keeping enough money to coming in to keep a roof over your head and maybe more than top ramen all the time. Right. And it might require that you're working 2 jobs or something like that, but it's that paycheck to paycheck survive. What I've learned is that for me, it was a transient thing. It's something that I went through when I was starting the business. But I do realize that there are people that are stuck there. And I've been talking to people about the book and what have you. And sometimes it's parental. Well, my parents always did this, so that's where I learned about money. And they were always paycheck to paycheck. And so now it becomes a generational thing. And so we talk a little bit in the book about what you can possibly do to try and get yourself out of that. The next the next phase beyond that, I call spender. And it generally happens because you finally, after being without for so long, maybe something happens, you get a windfall, got a better job, and more money is coming in, you immediately move into this space of, anymore I like to pick on, maybe you need a new suit for work if that's what you need, or some new clothing. Anymore, the new phone is like, oh, I got to have a new phone or a new car or a better apartment. But then you expand into that capacity of spending, and then that spending will gobble up all of your income, and it tends to be this, it's almost like it pulls you back into being survival again, but it's survival at a much more comfortable level. And again, some people get stuck there. They just continue to expand their income, but the spending just keeps on going. But then quite often we'll see, and it happens in varying ages, and I can't tell you there's any one thing that happens where people go, I've got to change something. I think it usually happens when they realize that they're spending beyond their means and they need to reverse their habits. And there's a little bit of soul searching. You got to look in the mirror and go, okay, look, I'm not as well off as I pretend to be, or I'm spending to be. And then they move into this saver mode, and initially starts with paying off their debt, which is a form of saving. And usually what happens, why people have, especially credit card debt, is if they're spending their money and then next thing you know, they need a new set of tires, $1,200. What are they going to use?
Yep.
Boom, credit card. Transmission goes out, water heater, whatever your situation is, something larger comes up and the first thing you reach for is a credit card. So while I know a lot of the people in there in terms of like financial counseling, they're like, oh, pay off all the debt first. I actually like to take a split approach where I want to see some personal savings built up to cover those emergencies, so that if something does come up, you're not tapping a credit card again and feeling like you're going backwards.
That's right.
You can at least say, I didn't go any further in debt. I had the cash here to pay for it. So that's a saver. And then furthermore on that, as they pay off the debt and then start to accumulate money, it's, well, where do I put it? And, do I put it in a bank? Do I put it in a savings account? Or maybe they start looking at some investment vehicles, and they expand beyond that. So it's like they might move into some mutual funds or something like that, right?
And this, to be clear, would be the growers at this point?
No, these are the savers.
Still savers, okay.
Still savers. My writer's block actually came about when somebody said, could you give me an aha moment when the light bulb went on for some people where they switched from being savers to growers, and that's where I hit my block.
Yeah.
And after, I want to say a couple of months thinking about it, it dawned on me that there's no switch. It's different for everybody, but it quite often is, they have a certain amount of affluence, meaning they've got a certain amount of money in the bank. And I'm not going to put a number out there because it could be different for everybody. Or they feel much more confident in their level of income coming in that's greater than their need to spend it.
Yeah, and that's where the transition starts.
And that's where it's a transition. I would argue the other part of that is working with an appropriate advisor that recognizes the difference between the two. And ultimately, and obviously I'm a little biased because I am that person, it's the advisor that is going to help coach them to get into that grower mindset.
Yeah.
And this is how I would summarize this up. If you look back at the stock market in general terms, over 100 years, it goes down once every 5 years. So like 20 years out of the last 100, the market has gone down. Round numbers, I'm being vague for
Very
those
general,
people.
yeah.
General. So you could say it's 1 in 5 years. A saver is more worried about that fifth year and losing money than making money in the other 4. A grower is more interested in making money than worried about losing in the other 4, because if you focus on how do we make money appropriately, then the fifth year, while inconvenient, it's not devastating. So there's got to be a little bit of a yin and yang in that. And that's where myself as an advisor, and I know we all work together, so we
Yep.
like to work with those people that are looking for that different way of looking at it. And part of that is also how you look at taxes and the money that you're earning or saving or
Yeah.
putting away. And then the last one, which is the rare one, it's someone I call a builder. They're essentially a serial entrepreneur. While we may be able to manage some money for them, it will be transient. We're not going to have it for long because they're going to turn around and put into another business, another venture, which is kind of fun actually to work with people like that. But know that they're not the people that are going to be with us for long term in grows, because they're always looking to build a business of some sort, which is just who they are.
It is, and they are fascinating people, to say the least, as are everyone you work with. But just to clarify real quick, or to summarize, probably a better way to say it, we have our survivors, our spenders, our savers, our growers, and then builders, right?
Yeah.
And so that really, I think, sets the stage for this book and what it becomes. And as I moved to the next question, it came up right away. But in the book, you talked about, this book, isn't going to make you rich overnight, right?
No.
But I thought that was so telling, at the beginning, because the book really, you see the benefits already from what we've already highlighted, that whether you're, 19 years old and trying to get it all figured out, or, you just retired at 65, there are chapters, all the chapters are relevant, but there are some that you're going to really relate to. And so if you could develop that a little bit more, about how this book is really a tool and kind of slow and steady wins the race versus, a lot of things out there, especially I think our younger clients are seeing a lot on the internet that isn't helping them. So talk a little bit about how they could put this book into motion, and maybe just a sample from a 19-year-old who's trying to figure it all out to somebody who's on the tip of retirement.
Yeah, nothing happens overnight. Anytime you see I noticed this with some of the people that have worked for us, and you see a 30-year-old that is like, why don't I own my second home yet? And why aren't I traveling first class? And in this internet world where you can go on and see people's highlight reel, and there are those that make, I don't know, millions very, very quickly, but I would argue it's few and far between. And if they don't understand the basics of where they are with their money, I would argue just because you make a lot today doesn't mean to say you're not going to lose a lot tomorrow. Because if you become an Instagram sensation and you make $1 million a month, but you spend $1.1 million a month, you're still broke. And going broke much faster than everyone else, right? So this book is as much about your mental discipline and identifying who you are. And it's actually been pretty interesting to be in client meetings. And, we've been working with unfortunately, we've had some clients pass away and their children we're working with. And we start talking about the money mindsets. And some of them will immediately identify as to who they are. They're like, oh, I'm a spender. And I'm like, okay, well, this is going to help us determine how we're going to take care of, the money mom's leaving you, because it doesn't happen overnight. You've got to fix your foundation, if you will, right? You've got to look at, I've been in survival mode, and having a bit of extra money is woohoo. And I would say consistency. So even going from a saver to a grower, that's still got to be something that's got to be done over time with consistency, because you got to get comfortable with, it's like, all right, I've got my corpus of funds. I'm okay putting this other money at risk, or becoming a grower with that money.
Yeah, no, I'm totally tracking that. That makes a lot of sense.
And so the 19-year-old would be, get your head on straight, read the book, identify where you are, figure out what you've got to do. And I'm no psychologist, and I'm not going to use neurolinguistic programming on you to get you to, but read it and identify where you are, and then pick what it is you're going to do to help get to the next phase. And whether it's, get a slightly better job, work more hours, put money in savings, not spend it. I always used to say earlier on in my career, I didn't like to see savings account connected to checking accounts because all that was an extra checking account with fees for no reason. So I like to see it put further away, where if you can't swipe your debit card and immediately have it drawn out of your savings account because you did it on a whim. If it's somewhere else, you have to think about it, transfer the money in, right, which slows that process down. Do you really need it? Our 65-year-olds or our pre-retiree, right at that retirement age, it really comes down to how good they've been at being a saver, to be completely honest. I mean, I've seen people retire with pension rollovers and large 401ks, and I've seen people at the same company retire with only the pension rollover and very small 401ks. I can tell you right now that the rollover for the latter, the people that have no 401k, all they're going to do is spend it. And those are the people that they look at that corpus of money and they go, oh yeah, send me 50,000, send me 50,000. Next thing you know, it's not if they run out of money, it's when. Whereas the people that had the 401k, it proves that they have that discipline to be a saver, which now allows us to coach them into being a grower and achieving a much higher success rate during their retirement years.
Yeah. In the title, Mind Over Money, harness the power of your thoughts to achieve wealth and financial security. One of the other aspects that I immediately encountered in the early chapters was that I think a lot of books in this space, and as someone who works in this space, and you've worked in this space for many decades, you find that it's often seems like it's very philosophical, or it's very much almost, just do this, march these steps, right?
Yeah.
And I found that this was a really unique blend.
Thank you.
Was that, yeah, no.
Not intentional.
Yeah. Is that there's some of both, because I think sometimes, as you're trying to educate someone, depending on how they learn, right? And some people really appreciate, even though they want to understand, they appreciate the steps. Just do this, the formula, right? But then there's others that want to understand more. But this seems to have that. It was like a very nice blend, and so I think that could really stick out. But what I was getting to is the question for you to share with the audience would be, as the book was developing, was there did it change as you were writing it, or did you know 1 to 10, 10 being the last chapter per se, the ending, and if you could talk a little bit about any evolution that maybe occurred during the writing process.
Yeah, I learned to write a book. I got to tell you. So somebody asked me recently, it's like, well, how good is the book? And I'm like, honestly, I think it's okay. And I say that because after completing one, you now realize how you could make it better, right?
Yes.
So this is my first book. I'm proud of it. I would say it's definitely decent. And I know the next one I'm going to do is I've already put a lot more thought into it, and I know we're going to allude to that later. But we outlined the chapters first, and then we backfilled the data. But going to your point about it being a nice blend of these are the steps, in my experience, there is no one magic pill for anybody. I mean, we've sat in front of enough clients and households to know that you can have twin brothers that live next door to each other, had the same job, but their finances are completely different. Just because you have the steps to fix it, if you don't switch your mindset first, it doesn't matter what steps you outline. It's like everybody knows they need to eat better, but until you fix the desire to actually be fitter, healthier, or whatever, you're not going to do it. Somebody could lay out, this is what you can eat every day for the next month, you're going to drop 20 pounds.
Yeah.
But until you change your mindset about how you feel about A, the outcome, and B, what you're going through, it doesn't really matter what's put in front of you.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a you're right, there is a blend, and it's because of that. And part of that comes from, like, there was a time in my life when I was a lot heavier.
Yeah.
And until you commit to the result, doesn't really matter what is put in front of you.
Yeah. Why are you looking at me during this time? No, I'm teasing
Well, because
you.
you're in front of me, but
I'm joking.
no guilt
Someday
on
when
your
my
part.
family sees this, they'll be like, "See, no."
You're welcome, Summer.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
That's right. My wife will love hearing that. Summer will love that. So very good. I appreciate the thoroughness of that. And anyway, I'm glad you smiled about the other one, and it does make me think about areas of improvement in my own life.
Well,
for sure.
it's same with anybody, and
Yeah.
that wasn't. I'm looking at you because you're in front of me, but it's even now myself. I know I could be in better shape, but I have to commit my mind to actually resolving that. You want to be in better financial shape. You have to commit your mind to that resolution.
And that's the part I think that's unique. Like in the book, you tribute a couple of other books, Think and Grow Rich and Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which in our business, these are books that are almost like a rite of passage that you have to read in this business. I mean, you don't have to, but I think most of us have that work in this. So drawing from those, and I think that was neat. Was there an influence from those works or others that also helped kind of maybe chart the path for the book today?
I would argue every book I've read. I've been doing this coming up on 30 years. And I've read so many different financial books. Pardon me. And I would argue all of them in some way, shape, or form have had an impact on this book.
Yeah.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki talks about, his I think it was his Rich Dad and his Poor Dad. That's where he came up with it from. And if you haven't read the book, by all means, it's a great book. And he's a great author, and I have a lot of respect for him. Think and Grow Rich, and I'm drawing a blank on who wrote that, but that book is pushing Napoleon Hill.
Yeah,
that book is pushing 100 years old.
Yeah, so
it's written. You think 100 years ago, all of that information still applies. This isn't the end all be all. This is a piece of the bigger picture. It might sing to you, it might not sing to you, but we're all different people, and every one of those books has had an impact on what this has become and who I have become as a financial advisor.
Yeah, no, I think it's extremely well said. In chapter 6, there's some.
Shoot, is there a test?
No, not at all. But in chapter 6, there's a spot where you talk about tax awareness for growers. And maybe that, earlier, these transitions are not, okay, now you've passed, here's your certificate, you're officially a grower, right? You've definitely laid that out for us. And I think it's important as people read, right, is that you keep reading, you keep going, and you study all the different mindsets. But in there with this importance of tax awareness for growers, and without, stepping into any tax advice, but just generally, that really, I think, is a pivotal period for so many clients, so many people that have individual retirement accounts, 401ks, just really a lot that the baby boomers in America are currently facing as they are pre-retirees or retire. And so, if you could talk a little bit to that, just globally about how an investor and a savior, and these people that are in the different evolution of mindsets, how they should think about taxes or consider to think about taxes.
Well, first of all, the next book is entirely on that subject.
Okay.
So know that the one I've outlined the first 15 chapters of that book, and we are discussing taxes, investments, and what have you. I would argue that most financial advisors will approach a client and say, I can give you better returns here, or more safety, or what have you. And I know personally, I was never trained on how to incorporate taxes into that. Once you start realizing that taxes can put a huge dent in your retirement lifestyle, you start to realize that the planning around taxation and retirement needs to start much, much earlier. So, I'll allude right? And this is
It was a question later, but cover it now. Yes, please tell us.
so. Are 401ks and IRAs right for you? And I would argue to the point that if there's a match where you work, 100%, that's free money, right? You put in 3, they give you 3, 100% return your money. By all means, do that. Of course, currently, if you're over 50, I think you can do some $30,000 into your retirement account a year, which does reduce your income. But I want to back up to when you first started your career, and I'm complicit in this defer. Your CPAs, tax preparers, oh yeah, fund your IRA, max fund your 401k, save. So those 30-year-old, and we've got teenagers, right?
Yes.
They're going to be coming to the workforce in the next, hopefully decade.
Yes.
Or sooner.
They say the new 18 is 26, and
Yeah.
I'm truly hoping that it's a little faster for mine.
Right.
So
So if they put $100 a month away into their 401k, because that's all they can afford to do, what are they saving in taxes? Their income's so low, I'm guessing what, $120?
Yeah.
Maybe? But then, I don't know, fast forward, they're now 45 years old, they've managed to put a couple of $100,000 in their 401k, and a friend comes up to them and says, hey, I've got this great business opportunity. Do you want in? It's going to cost 50 grand. I'm putting up 50, you put up 50. And now your kid, the only option that they have is to get their money from a retirement account. Now, that's not cheap money. They've got to pay income tax on all of it, plus a 10% early withdrawal penalty.
Yeah.
Or they borrow it from their 401k, which means they've got to make payments to pay it back.
Yeah.
There's an opportunity cost. Conversely, fast forward, now you're looking at retirement. You've got saved a couple of $1 million in your IRA, your 401k, and you retire and you think to yourself, okay, I'm gonna take income off of that and I'll be great. And then you realize that you're gonna pay income tax on all of it. And now it's gonna have a negative impact on the amount of premiums you pay on your Medicare. Congratulations. Yeah. And this is the way you look at it. The worst kind of income from a tax perspective is W-2 income. Unfortunately, it's what 90% of the world deals with.
True. Yep.
Right? So, which is why they say defer. But the second worst one is retirement income. That's all taxable as well. The best one is tax-free. So arguably a Roth might be a good story, but
Yeah.
if you're that 45-year-old to touch the money and it's a Roth, it's expensive money. So there's opportunity cost. What that opportunity cost is, you don't know because you can't predict 15 years in the future what somebody might come up to you and say, hey, let's start our own business.
Yeah.
Right? The second best one in my mind is long-term capital gain. If your only income is long-term capital gain, you're married, the first $90,000 in round numbers has a tax rate of 0. So now if you're retired, you have a couple $1 million and it's all long-term capital gain or qualified dividends.
Yeah.
You're now in a situation where you're in an incredibly low tax bracket, which doesn't change your Medicare premiums.
Yeah.
Or what we call IRMA. So taxation, notice all of this I've talked about, I've never once said, oh, let's give you a better return. What I have said is, let's give you a better after-tax result. And I think this next book, and that's part of being the grower mindset. You've got to understand how those items work together.
Yeah, no, I think it's...
and that wasn't tax advice, by the way.
Yeah, we have all our disclaimers out there,
Yeah.
of course. So I think the powerful part that you've actually instilled in those of us, and we work together, all the time, is that, it's important that I think people a lot of times that think that they don't need it need to make sure that they have a really good tax professional. And it's really a partnership, with a financial advisor, with a realtor, with an attorney. And I think that, unfortunately, a lot of times in the current mindset, no pun intended, right, is that they're, I don't need that, or it's just about the return. It's almost like trying to, like banking checking, savings, pretty simple concepts overall, right? And they try to apply that to then, an IRA. And we know it isn't. So I think for those out there, that are in the audience, the important part is that you really seek, multiple professionals that are really good at their silos that make up your well-being, your estate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that the book does a good job at, not giving tax advice, but just making sure that as someone retires, and really thinking about it well into the future, not just when it's upon them, or not once you get the tax bill, it's too late, right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
it's really about preparing for that, or thinking, or even making choices about what money would be spent first in retirement. I'm just always amazed at how many people don't consider that. And again, I credit you for mentioning, again, not tax advice, but mentioning that taxes are just so important to so many that are retiring or have retired. So,
Well, and if I can piggyback
yes,
on
of
that,
course.
we've quite often when we're applying the knowledge that we have about investing in taxes, we have now had to tell clients that not all tax professionals are created equal. And if you find that you're getting pushback from your tax professional, it might be time to find a new one. I've had situations where the tax professional they were still in survival mode, and they're working with a client that was not in survival mode, and the tax professional was applying their mindset to somebody who's actually quite successful, and therefore they were paying way more tax than they should, and we've had to help them find better representation. And I never thought I'd be in that position where I would be the one saying, hey, you need a better tax professional. But ultimately, and we do. We have a bevy of great people that we work with. And I never am happy when I've got to help a client move to another representation, but it does happen from time to time. And I would argue that you want to work with professionals that are successful, and part of this whole book has come about as my own success has flourished. I'm now applying all of these principles, both in terms of taxation, investing, and how I work with my CPA. It's not just, oh, this is the plan I'm giving you. No, I'm giving you my plan, and that I think is different.
That's unique. It really is, and I think it also allows, like, something that we're always trying when working with people. You always want to do it caring. That you actually care and can relate, and that's the same, I think, as those in the audience retire. Sometimes it's good to do an evaluation of the professionals in your life. It might be, you might need a state attorney that is more complex. Maybe a paralegal doesn't work anymore for the way these are just hypotheticals. But with the taxes, with even the advisors, sometimes these were great professionals that helped you when you were in your career. But sometimes as you come out into retirement, you might need other specialists, other people with different types of expertise. And so I think that I can draw that out of the book in multiple spots, but it's important for our audience to understand, that it's your estate, right? It's your finances, and so and it should be you should take it to the very best, in those realms. As we continue to kind of make our journey through the book and just talking about these themes, it's been very insightful, and you can see the passion that you have for this topic. Like, this is real. This isn't just something that was just thrown together. This is a project, something that I watched you work really hard on, and also it's interesting because you're successful in these other realms that we haven't really talked about yet. So you figure, author is the latest, right, in your endeavors. But I mean, you've been an entrepreneur, for 30 years. You've owned your own financial services practice, but also the other piece that I'd like to talk about, because I think it leads most directly to this, is that I've heard you refer to yourself often as a teacher, right, and as someone who helps other professionals, within our business. So we help clients all the time, but you also have a huge heart to help others make sure they're helping their clients the best way possible. You've done, many keynote addresses now.
I have.
And so it's another area. It's not just about the book. If there's others out there that are interested in, having Philip speak in an event, he's more than willing, and it'll be exciting. And they're always, well delivered, keynote addresses that are informational. But if you could talk a little bit maybe to that one. I mean, I know from your dad, husband, all these things, right?
Yeah.
But when you think of the professional side, I think everyone knows a lot about the advisor Philip but maybe not so much about the teacher, which I think was a direct link as your friend to this book. So if you could talk to that a bit, I think that could be really powerful.
Yeah, anytime I think about me being a teacher and standing up on stage, and I think the first time I stood up on stage in front of my peers was the most frightening thing I ever did. I remember my first live workshop that I did. A little old lady came up to me afterwards and she goes, "You're new at this, aren't you?" And it was so humiliating. She didn't do business with me. I remember her to this day. I can picture her. That was probably 25, 30 years ago, pushing 30 years ago now. But to where I am now as a speaker, presenter, I think part of it is that I've always been a student, so I'm always learning. I don't think I've ever missed a conference that I've been able to attend. I attend all of them. There's always something, and just because you went to it and you've heard it before, it doesn't mean to say you were ready for it. So sometimes it requires repetition.
Okay.
Right?
I'm following that.
I remember learning about a particular product that we use a ton of now. I learned about it 25 years ago. I didn't start using it until 7 years ago. But there was that lag of many, many years where I knew it was there. I just didn't know where it was going to fit. And then it came back up again, and suddenly it clicked. And I love to give back to the community that I'm part of. And whether it be internally within the financial services world or externally, you think about what it takes to be an entrepreneur. My parents were entrepreneurs. I paid attention to what they were doing. They ran a great business. I learned from them. I worked in it, transitioned into this business, and have just been an entrepreneur. As you said, a lot of financial advisors, especially on the independent side, say that they run a business, but they don't. They actually are practitioners. They actually have no idea how to run a business. They're two separate things. To the point where I'm now part of a CEO mentor group, and I realize that it doesn't matter what business you're in. If you own a business, you will suffer from the same headaches in varying degrees.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not just about, who am I going to do the financial plan for? That's the product. The business is, how do you run that business, right?
Yeah. Well said.
But speaking on stage has been really fun, and I've now learned to love it and enjoy it, and the feedback has been tremendous. And I would love to give back to more people, whether it be talking about the book, the next book that's coming up, or a group of entrepreneurs.
Yeah. The neat part, I think, in just like the book, is that there's something in there for everyone. If you're beyond, the survivor mode, I think it's important to still read that chapter, because you're going to know people in your life, whether those are your relatives or friends or just people you run into that are in that mode.
Yeah.
So the neat part about, a potential talk, from Philip would be, I think would really be that it could be custom tailored to whatever, half hour or 40 minutes or whatever was needed for your organization or for your group, for your wherever you spend time, for your church, for your social committee, wherever it is. I mean, it really is something that can be applied to really anyone and everyone. And
Agreed.
I think that's so huge. And you mentioned about running a business, right? And in chapter 8, it really focuses a
You know,
lot.
you do realize I think you know the chapters better than I do at this point.
I might.
I'm like, oh, good Lord, another test.
Yeah. No. But
It's fresher in your mind than it is in mine.
Yeah, because I was excited. You know, I had read little bits and pieces that you had shared as a kind of a preview.
Yeah.
So I was able to go through it all, and you know, I appreciate the nice inscription that you put in there to me, and it really means a lot. And I was sharing it with my family just recently. But in that chapter 8, it's really about legacy building, right? And I think it ties to something that, you know, a lot of clients that are out there, potential clients or people that are just, you know, thinking about finances, is should I be concerned with legacy? You know, a lot of times we think with like almost like they need to have a Carnegie Hall in their life to then have a legacy. And I think that two things that really come out, and then I'll let you run with this a bit, is one, you know, everyone's a CEO of their finances, right? And of their household. I mean, everybody of their personal finances. Every person is connected,
regardless of how competent they are.
That's right.
They're the leader. Yeah.
And also nowadays too, I think that legacy, it's not just financial, but often financial provides the foundation of legacy. And again, it's probably much more of you know, something that's philosophical. But with that said, I think they tie together in that chapter 8, that you have to take action, personal finances. If you're, you know, a married couple, then, you know, it's joint, but still each person has their own personal parts. So like an individual retirement account is about the individual, right?
Yep.
And so tying that into being a CEO, I think is something that we reflect, or something that you reflect when you're helping people plan. And then also talking to people about legacies, because I think a lot of times people, when they finally see the plan laid out, then they start to understand the difference it could make for their grandchildren, great-grandchildren, their church, their city, their, you know, there was someone in recently that was going to donate a healthy sum to a botanical garden, right?
Yep.
And so if you could talk to those two themes about being a CEO of your finances, but also how even people that are in survivor mode, knowing that they're going to make their way, are also should think about their legacy, you know?
Great tee up. So legacy, most people think legacy as being something financial. Let's start there.
Yeah.
And saying, okay, maybe you're a little late in the game to think to yourself, heck, I'm just trying to retire and survive. I'm not worried about my kids. They can make their own way. But maybe the legacy that you leave them is the tools laid out in the book saying, hey, look, I want you to learn from this so you become better than I, right? And I think of my my grandfather.
Yes.
I alluded to my mom's book. My grandfather fought in World War II. We're from England, so he fought under Montgomery in North Africa against Rommel, and he ended up becoming the fire chief of a pretty sizable town. And when he passed away, they had in England, they had the horses with almost, I don't want to say royal, but it was a huge affair. So his legacy was left on us, not in a financial way, but in a leadership way, and how to be a good person and stand up for what's right. And I will tell you a little bit of family history. I have a letter signed by King George for my grandfather, thanking him for his service, with his medals on one side. And for you soccer fans out there, he played for the Bournemouth Cherries in the 1930s, and I have those medals as well. So,
how neat.
Yeah, a little bit of family history. So, while he didn't leave us a tremendous amount of wealth, he left us plenty of wealth in other ways. So, think of, like, if you come from a family of we've always lived paycheck to paycheck, this is who we are, maybe the legacy that you can leave your children is to break that cycle, right? But if you're able to break that cycle for yourself and you've got enough time to make more money, and I would argue, I think Colonel Sanders, Kentucky Fried Chicken, I don't think he became successful till he was 70. I think he had something like 4 failed or 5 failed restaurants. Look it up. It's worth the look up. Not everyone becomes successful in their 30s and builds on, and becomes the Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk of the world, Some people, it happens much, much later in life. So the legacy leaving is also teaching your children how to be good stewards of money, because it's quite often it's, what is it? There's an expression, give me a second. My grandfather rode a horse to work so my father could drive a car. I drive a Lamborghini, and I don't. And my children will end up driving a car, and their children will be walking a horse. Because when the money comes easy, it's harder. So you've got to teach your children how to be good stewards of money.
Yeah.
And that's one of the like, being an older parent, we have conversations about money in our family because my kids missed we can't afford that. So now we use terms like, well, it's not in the budget, right?
Sure.
And so we're trying to have them understand that they have privilege, financial privilege, because I'm more successful than I was when we first adopted them, that they have access to things that other people don't. So it's teaching them to be good stewards of money, and that Amazon just doesn't deliver stuff out of willy-nilly. Daddy actually has to pay the bill, right? Yeah. So it's that. And one of the things where I think anyone with children, when I grew up, and probably, I know we're an age difference here, your mom probably pulled cash out of her purse, wallet, or wrote a check and wrote a subtract mark next to the balance, and at least once a week or twice a month sat down at the kitchen table with the bills and wrote checks out. I guarantee you, my kids have never seen me pay a bill in my life. All they know is I tap and stuff gets, or it just appears on the doorstep. Yeah. So there's no concept of tapping is actually a negative on something somewhere in terms of finances. Yeah. So teaching, I mean, this is the generation that is going to be the hardest to get to understand the value of money. In a way, I don't want to say they're doomed for failure, but they're not taught to balance a checkbook anymore. Yeah. Come to think of it, I don't either. I just look at my balance and like, oh, did the check clear? Or did the automatic payment go out? Right? So as a society, we're not even having any education around basic finance.
It's true. No, and it's, I think it's well said. The good news is that there's a lot of resources out there.
Correct.
I think for younger people, the bad news is that there's a lot of resources out there, right? So you want to find and make sure that if you are putting curriculum in front of someone young, if you're buying, this book for your grandchildren, you want to make sure that it's good education, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we're competing. I think a lot of the principles in here are really the timeless principles. We talk about technology, but technology just delivers those timeless principles with money. And I think that the biggest obstacle for many of our younger viewers and many of the younger people in the lives of our clients and those that are in our audience today is that they're competing against the internet and social media. And unfortunately, that's very staged. Right.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times you don't see the other times where the person lost money, whether that's a day trader or whatever it is. And so these principles are really are expanding on using and presenting them in unique ways, but those timeless principles for people. So it makes it, when you think about what we've covered here today, from legacy building to making sure that you understand taxes and understand that you want a good tax professional in your life, mm-hmm. To the different mindsets, survivor, all the way to builder. It's pretty amazing that all of that is in one book, right? And I think as we start to kind of wind down, today for our audience, one part that I would like to highlight again is, please go out and get the book, right? It's available. It's nominal on Amazon, but it could be a great, this time of year, and I know this podcast will be out there for a while, but it'd be a great stocking stuffer. Yeah. It'd be just a neat thing again, I can't stress it enough, whether you're someone just starting out with your own finances, and trying to figure everything out, all the way to somebody that's been retired for 20 years. You're going to find, value to this book. And so as we conclude, so again, please, Amazon, you mentioned Barnes & Noble.
Apple Books.
Apple Books. So there's all these great ways to grab a copy of it.
I will say at the time of recording, it's not an audiobook yet, but it will be soon.
Yeah, and that's exciting. I was going to
Yeah.
ask about that, so we look forward to that because it could be something great to just listen to, on a commute, right?
Yeah.
And listen to
But
different
I also
chapters.
know that you can, I think you can download onto a book and then you have the book read it to you.
I agree, and I do a lot.
Yeah.
I learn auditorily, I think, overall,
Yeah.
and so I do that often, or have the computer and get to pick the voice, and it
Yeah.
helps me a lot of times retain things. But what I'd like to close with, so again, please go out and get the book. Check it out on Amazon, check it out at Barnes & Noble, check it out on Apple. And again, like I said, I think it'd be a great gift for someone, great to go through yourself. And again, you'll find chapters that I think will make you reminisce about parts of your life and other chapters that you're living right now. And that, again, is a powerful tool for anybody that has an interest in the book. So as we conclude, I thought one part was really unique, and that's the appendix, where there's a lot of practical, so like at the end of the book, you get this nice summary. And to me, it's where the philosophical, in some respects, met do these things, like a checklist. So if you want to talk a little bit about the last components of the book and how it really just, it summarizes, but also I think if you're like, okay, I just read this wonderful book, I know I want to be, I want to be a builder someday. So where do I start? I think you start there. Can you talk to that a bit?
As I recall, because it's been a hot minute since I finished it. In the appendix, I know we've put in things for budgeting.
Yes.
Things like that. And I would argue that everything starts around budgeting. And one of the things I learned early on in terms of being an advisor is that, what we all have our negotiables and non-negotiables in a relationship, right? With like, for instance, if like I can obviously, for those of you on camera, do without a haircut. It's pretty easy for me. My wife, on the other hand, that is no, absolutely must, right? So that becomes a non-negotiable, right? Now, having a really fancy gym membership or a basic one, okay? Now it becomes, okay, is that something that we really need? Or do we need 7, 8, 9, 10 streaming services? Or should we make a commitment to binge watch, one of them for the next 2 months, and then we'll switch over to another one so that you can limit your expenses on those kind of things. So, itemizing the absolute must-have, which is rent, gas, electricity anymore. Unfortunately, it's either internet or phone, right? But also in that list needs to be savings is an A item. A B item is a non-negotiable, like for the ladies out there, you want to look and feel beautiful. So that might be that you get your hair done, right? Whereas us guys, we can go a little bit longer and, maybe not spend as much on that. So it's a lower dollar value item. And then we've got we would love to go on vacation to, Disney World or what have you, but that's not something that we can afford to do right now. So that becomes this is where the savings actually comes from, is that C column.
Yeah.
So, and then educate yourself. I mean, read some of the books that we've mentioned, that there's so many great authors out there and all of them bring to the table, I'd love to think I'm unique in my perspective, but I just digest. And if I'm one of the pieces that you digest and learn from, I'm truly flattered that you've taken the time and spent a few dollars to get this book. But if I can help you in your journey so that you and or your family have a better financial life and legacy, then I'm honored. So thank you for the consideration.
Well, we're here today, as you know, with Philip Board, author of Mind Over Money. And we've gone through a nice journey of this new book. We've talked about it, and I'm glad that you highlighted the personal finance component. I think we alluded to it many times, but there's also a lot of really good just advice and consideration. And I like how, a lot of what you've laid out in there on personal finance, I don't think it was absolute language. It was consider this, like you just talked about the subscriptions. So I think that is, something that can be very helpful because everybody's unique. right? And their situations and their priorities. And even the example you just gave about the hair is funny to think of. But as for the last question today, and again here with Philip Board, author of Mind Over Money, it's been a great conversation, but I want to leave one more last chance for you to say a few more things. Is there anything that I didn't ask that I should have today?
Yeah, did you ever think that I would become an author? And the answer is, good Lord, no. I never thought that I had anything unique enough to bring to the table. So I guess in retrospect, if someone offers you to do something and it's a little outside your comfort zone, do it. Try it. You never know what'll come out of it. So yeah, that first invitation to write about savers and growers, and certainly has been a catalyst. And now I've got another book in the pipeline, and I believe there's a third one in the realm as well. So it's become exciting. Wow. It's become really fun.
I think what we take away from you, Philip, is that it's important to look through the windshield, not the rearview mirror, right?
Correct.
And I think
that's a great summary. Thank you.
Today we're talking about this specific book. But I think it's important because it's mindset. So again, there were a lot of practical components, a lot of checklist components, a lot of philosophical components. But at the end of the day, whether it's your finances or just life in general for a moment, if we kind of go beyond that, is that, if you're looking through the windshield and not the rearview mirror, the future's bright. Mm-hmm. If you're looking behind you, it's dangerous, right? And so I think it's, and you really live by that. And so what you just said, how humbling, right? At one point, it's like, how could I ever have written a book? Well, now you've written one, and it sounds like there's so many more in the future. So, on behalf of Financial Fitness Podcast, we just thank you for being here today. It's always a pleasure for me, for the audience, to get to interview you as the founder, So a lot of times you're interviewing the other people, so it's neat to be on this side. And again, we just hope that you take a good look at the book. Where it's available. And Philip, I just want to thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Tyler.
And with that, we'll see you on the next episode.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Like today's episode, don't forget to like and subscribe. We're on all of the streaming platforms. Wherever you listen to your podcasts or watch them, we're on there. Check in, and if you've got some questions, we'll make sure that we address them so that in a future episode, we'll be talking to you. Thank you.